Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Samich Ches Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. The Gemara had brought B'Shem Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yochanan also said like this, that a Baal Keri shares the same designation as a Zov, in that the Zov, when he is Tameh as a Zov, must leave the Machane Levia. Similarly, the Baal Keri also must leave Machane Levia. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, challenging this from the following Brisa, Mitzara Chamor Mizov. A Mitzara is more stringent than a Zov, that a Mitzara must leave not only the Machane Yisrael and the Levia, but also, not only Machane Shechina and Levia, but also Machane Yisrael, all three camps. V'Zov Chamor Mitmei Meis. And the Zov is more Chomer than Tmei Meis. The Tmei Meis only has to leave the Machane Shechina, whereas the Zov has to leave both the Machane Shechina as well as the Machane Levia. Yotza Baal Keri Shetame Tmei Meis Chomer Mimenu. The Brisa concludes this excludes the Baal Keri whose Tmei Meis is more Chomer than it. The Gemara now explains this Brisa. My Yotza. What does it mean that the Baal Keri is excluded? Lav Yotze Michlal Zov Ubo Lechlal Tmei Meis. Is it not speaking about where the Baal Keri goes out? He's excluded from being compared to the Zov, whereby he's like the Tmei Meis. The Hot Tmei Meis Chomer Mimenu Umuter B'Machane Levia. For after all, the Tmei Meis, he is more stringent than the Zov. He is Tamei for 7 days, whereas the Zov is only than the Baal Keri. Whereas the Baal Keri is only Tamei for 1 day, until the evening. And therefore, since the one who's Tmei Meis only has to leave Machane Shechina, so too then the Baal Keri only has to leave Machane Shechina. So this therefore is a challenge on what we said before, the name of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yochanan, that a Baal Keri is compared to a Zov that has to leave also the Machane Levia. The Gemara says, Loi, that's not the explanation of this Brisa. Yotza Mimachane Tamei, Machane Tmei Meis, v'nichnas lemachane Zov. He is excluded, the Baal Keri, from the Machane of Tmei Meis, and he's included together with the Zov in the same category. Ve'afal gadav Tmei Meis chomor mimenu demuter b'machane Levia. Even though it's so that the Tmei Meis is more chomor in that it has a tamei of 7 days, and the Baal Keri only has a 1 day tumah. Lemai the dami li lei medaminan lei. But that which was comparable, which we compare to, we compare. In other words, since the Baal Keri is more comparable to the Zov, in that the fact that the Zov also has its tumah that's yotza alov migufay, so too the Baal Keri, his tumah also results from that which leaves his body. So therefore we compare the Baal Keri to the Zov and not to the Tmei Meis, whereby, just as the Zov has to leave Machane Levia, so too the Baal Keri must leave Machane Levia. The Gemara now brings the following Brisa, Tani Tana Kamei de Rav Yitzchok bar Avdimi. The following Brisa was taught before Rav Yitzchok bar Avdimi. I'll read you the pasuk that it brings in this Brisa. The states, in regards to a Baal Keri, Ki ziyeh b'cho ish asher lo yeh tor mikra laila. When there'll be a man who has a Baal Keri, v'yotzo el michutz lamachane, and he shall then leave to go outside of the machane. Lo yovo el toicha machane, he shall not enter the machane. So the Brisa now is going to analyze the last two statements. On the one hand, the Brisa says that he shall leave the machane, and then it goes on to say he shall not enter the machane. Says the Brisa, quoting this pasuk, Ve'yotze el mechutz lamachane, and he shall go out, this Baal Keri, out of the machane. Zu machane shechina. The Brisa comments is referring to machane shechina. Lo yovo el toicha machane. The latter part of the pasuk says he shall not enter the machane. The Brisa comments Zu machane levia. This refers to not entering the machane levia. Mikan le Baal Keri sheyotza chutz lishtei machanos. From here we see the Baal Keri must leave 2 machanos, machane shechina and machane levia. Omar lei. Now Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi has a question, has a problem with the way this Brisa is stated. He says, Akanti loy ayalte apikte. Here we're talking about where the Baal Keri is told he has to leave the Machane. Okay, so if you're saying that's referring to Machane Shechina, so we haven't yet said that he has left also Machane Levia. And now you're telling me that we're dealing with somebody who entered the Machane Levia, therefore we have to say that he cannot enter. If he already left it, we don't speak about him leaving the Machane Levia, that we should say he shall not enter it. So he says, Ayalte, did he go in? And therefore, Apikte, we have to talk about him going out. The Pasuk did not say anything about him going in from the outside into the Machane Levia. It has to speak about him going out. Lishna Achrina, the same point is mentioned in a different way, with different words. Akati, Loya Pikte, Ayalte. Rav Yitzchak Bar Dimi says, he did not yet go in to the Machane Levia, that we should discuss him going out, and therefore it doesn't make sense to explain the Brisa in this manner. How can this Brisa be understood? Ella ema michutz lemachane. Rather, the Brisa must mean that when it says in the pasuk that the Baal Keri has to go out of the Machane, it means zu Machane Levia. He has to go out of the Machane Levia. Lo yavoy el toich Machane. When the latter part of the pasuk says that he shall not enter inside the Machane, zu Machane Shechina. It's referring to Machane Shechina. Maskifla Ravina. Ravina challenges the way Rav Yitzchak Bar Dimi explains the Brisa. Ema idi ve'idi lemachane shchina v'lavar Allah be'esei v'lo sa'asei. Say that it's talking about both machane shchina, that he must leave the machane shchina, and now he cannot go enter the machane shchina, touching us both in mitzvahs asay to leave and in mitzvah lo sa'asei to enter, not to enter. Im Kain, says the Gemara, Leima Kro, if that was so, then let the Pasuk state, V'yotze el michutz lemachane, v'lo yavoy el toich, and stop there. That the Baal Keri leave, he shall go out from the machane, and he shall not enter, psik. Hamachane lamali, why does it mention a second time hamachane? If it's talking about the same machane of Shechina, Shmamina litein loy machane acheres. It must be talking about two different machanos. And that's how Rav Yitzchak Bar Dimi explained the Brisa. It refers to then that he must go out of the machane, referring to the machane Levia, and he shall not enter the machane Shechina. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah that stated that when performing the Korban Pesach on Yud Daled, that comes out to be on Shabbos, so the Shechita and the Hakda and the Zrikas Hadam of the Korban Pesach is Doiches HaShabbos, because those must be performed on Yud Daled, as we learned out Moyadoi Agzer Shofar from the mitzvah of Korban Tamid. Just as Korban Tamid is Doiches HaShabbos, so too the Korban Pesach is Doiches Shabbos. So therefore the Shechita and the Zrikas Hadam must be performed on Shabbos, is Doiches HaShabbos. The Mishnah goes on to say that also Michui Krovov is also Doiches HaShabbos. The Gemara explains, my Michui Krovov. What is meant in the Mishnah of Michui Krovov, which is Doiches HaShabbos? Rav Huna Omar shemenakvon besakin. When you pierce the intestines with a knife, causing the liquefied parts that are the liquefied waste inside the intestines to then be able to then go out. And therefore, Michu refers to this piercing of the knife of the intestines. He learns that it's referring to that the putrid leicha that is in the innards is then going to be scratched out through the knife. The knife is going to have to then cause, when you bring the knife into the innards, to bring out this putrefied type of leicha. And therefore, otherwise it would stay in the intestines if you don't then scoop it out, brush it out with the force of the knife. In other words, he's learning that the word michui in the Mishnah is referring to this putrid, the putrid type of leicha that exists and sticks to the innards that one has to get out. Otherwise, it'll cause the intestines to become putrefied. So there it has to be removed. And that's why it's mutter on Yudali, that's Doiche Shabbos, because otherwise it'll ruin the intestines, which has to be eaten by the Bailim. Rabbi Eliezer said, my time of Dechia Barav. Why does Rav Chia Barav understand the word michui to be the putrefied lecha that is sitting on the walls of the intestine? Dechsiv, he brings a pasuk. Now the pasuk, I'll read to you, says in the Reisha, V'ra'u kivosim kidavram, and goes on to say, V'charvois mechim gorim yochelu. So the pasuk says, V'charvos mechim gorim yochelu. My mashma, what's meant by this pasuk? Kimetargem Rav Yosef. Like Rav Yosef, he translated this pasuk. V'niskehem dirashiyai tzadikayo yachsenun. He translated the pasuk as being that the objects, the nechasim, the property of the putrid ones, referring to the rishoyim, the tzaddikim will inherit. So therefore, he's learning over here that this pasuk refers to the way he explains the michui as being the mechim from the pasuk, refers to the putrefied ones, and therefore refers to the putrefied lecha in the intestines. The pasuk that we just quoted says in the Reisha, "V'ra'u kivosim b'davram," that referring to Klal Yisrael, that they shall be prosperous b'davram. Omar Rab Menashe bar Yirmiyahu Marav kimedubar bohem. He darshans kidavram as being kimedubar bom, that Klal Yisrael will be prosperous like it is spoken of them. My kimedubar bom. What does it mean that it's spoken of them? Omar Abai explains v'charvos meichin gorim yochelu, that the charvos of the meichim, that means that the churva, the ruins, the house of ruins of the meichim, they will live, those sojourners, and they will then consume the geirim yochelu, referring to those who were the Klal Yisrael who were then sojourning. They will then consume that property from the putrefied ones. Omar le Rava said, if it's stated the word charvos alone, then indeed it's the way you're explaining it, Abai. But hashid vicharvos milsa achriti ka'omar. But since it adds the vav in the word vicharvos, it's talking about a different matter, and therefore it's a separate matter than the Reisha is talking about. Elo Omar Rava ki Rav Chananel Omar Rav. Rav explains the way it's explained by Rav. The Omar Rav Chananel Omar Rav asidin tzadikim sheyichayu es hamesim. In the future, the tzadikim will then resurrect the dead. Ksiv hocha, it states over here in the pasuk v'ro kivosim kidavrom v'ksiv hasam yiru boshon v'gilad kimei olam. So it says over here the word v'ra'u, and they will graze the kavosim, kidavram, and it states in another pasuk, yiru, which is a gzeir shav to the word v'ra'u, bosham v'gilad, kimei olam. Now bosham and gilad, as the Gemara will be explaining now, is a reference to Elisha and Eliyahu who resurrected the dead. Bosham ze Elisha, haba min ha-bosham. Bosham is referring to Elisha, who was from Bashan. Shenemar says, Vayanai v'shofat b'Bashan. They were from Bashan. This is the descendants of God. V'ksiv po Elisha ben Shofat asher yotzak mayim al yidei Eliyahu. And here it refers to Elisha as the ben Shofat. So we see that he is from Bashan. So the Bashan is referring to Elisha. Gilad ze Eliyahu. Gilad is a reference to Eliyahu Novi. Shenemar says, "Vayomer Eliyahu hatishbi mitoy shvei Gilad." So these are the two that's referenced to, and these are the two that the Psachim tell us resurrected the dead. Omer Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni Rabbi Noinason asidin tzadikim sheyichayu meisim. In the future, the tzadikim will resurrect the dead. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, "Oid yeshu zekein v'zekenos b'rechovos Yerushalayim." The elders, both elderly men and elderly women, will be sitting in the streets of Yerushalayim. V'ish meshantoi biyodoi. Now, instead of speaking about both the zaken and the zakenos, it just says the ish. He will then hold his staff in his hand. Meiroiv yomim, from his many days, meaning from his old age. V'ksiv, and it states in the pasuk, V'samta mishanti al pnei anar. When Elisha instructed his eved to then perform the resurrection of the dead, he instructed him, my staff place on the lad, meaning the child who is dead, to then help to now bring out a resurrection of the dead. So therefore, ayidei, the staff, that's how they're going to do a resurrection of the dead, whereby the tzaddikim in the future will also then perform resurrection of the dead. Ula Rami. Now the Gemara brings several psukim that will speak what seems to be a contradiction, and is going to then be explained through the various Amoraim. Ula Rami. Ula first brings psukim that seem to be a contradiction. He contrasts the following. Ksiv, it says, Bila hamoves lanetzach, that moves will be swallowed up, it will be forgotten forever. V'ksiv, and yet it says, Ki hanar ben meya shana yamus, that the nar will live and he'll die at a young age of 100 years old. There's such longevity that even 100 years will be considered to be like he's a lad only. So here we see that when it comes to the future, it says over here that they'll have longevity. Yet, the first post that we quoted says, Bila ha-moves la-netzer, there will not be any moves. Lokasha answers the Gemara, Kan be Yisrael, Kan be Akum. That which is that there will not be any moves whatsoever, that's talking about Yisrael. That which it says there'll be longevity is talking about the Akum, the Ovdei Kachavim. The Ovdei Kachavim, my Bo Hasam, asked the Gemara, what is the Ovdei Kachavim doing over there, referring to the future that we're referring to, Olam Habo. The Siv, it says, Ve'amdu zorim ve'ro tzoinchem u'bnei nechar ikarechem ve'karmechem. It says, the strangers, referring to the Ovdei Kachavim, they will stand and they will then graze your sheep, and the Bnei Nechar will be yours who are plowing for you and also tending to your vineyards. Rav Chizda brings the following psukim that seem to be a contradiction. Ksiv v'chafra halavana u'boisha hachamo. Here it states that the lavana will be abashed and the sun will be embarrassed. V'ksiv, it says in the pasuk v'haya or halavana kor hachamo. Another pasuk states, however, that the lavana, the moon, will be like the sun. V'oracham yek shivasayim ke'or shivas hayomim, and the sun will be 7 times 7. That'll be 49 times the 7 days of the light of the 7 days of creation. In other words, 49 times 7. And there's a tremendous amount of light. So how could it be that it says that in the first pasuk that the chama, the chafra alvona v'ochvoisha chama, they'll be embarrassed because they're not going to be shining? Says the Gemara, Lo kasher kan le'olam habo kan li'yemos haMashiach. The first pasuk is talking about olam haba. The radiance of the splendor of the Shechina will be the only thing that will shine, and therefore the sun and the moon won't have any bearing, won't have any light. Whereas the Yemos HaMashiach, it'll be such a powerful type of light that it'll make whatever light we have pale into comparison. And according to Shmuel's Shita, that says Yemos HaMashiach is no different than the way that we live now, then what does it mean that Yemos HaMashiach is going to be? That's this tremendous amount of light, 49 times 7. Ma'ika l'meim, what are you going to say? How can that be in the Yemos HaMashiach? Answers the Gemara, Idi ve'idi la'olam haba. We can explain according to Shmuel that they're both verses are referring to olam haba. Velokashin is not a contradiction because kan b'machane shchina, kan b'machane tzadikim. In the machane shchina, then again the radiance of the shchina will be the only light, whereby the sun and the moon won't have any light whatsoever. But, however, in the machane tzadikim, the light of the lavana and the cham will be so strong, it'll be so powerful. In the future, it'll be 49 times 7. Rava Rami. Rava then contradicts brings a apparent contradiction. Contrast the following psukim. Ksivit states, Ani amis va'achyeh. I'll read the whole pasuk, the pasuk in Devarim. It states the following. B'ru'u ata, HaKadosh Baruch Hu displays his power. See now, ki ani hu ve'ein Elohim imodi. I am the one, and there is no power other than me. Ani amis va'achayeh. I will cause to life, and I will bring to death. Sorry, I will bring to death, and I will bring to life. Mochatzti v'ani erpo ve'ein miyodi matzil. I will cause one to be wounded, and I will heal, and nobody has the power to stand in my way. Says the Gemara. Ksiv, it states this pasuk, Ani amis va'achayeh. I will put to death, and I will bring to life. Then it goes on to say in the Sefer the pasuk, V'ksiv machatzti v'ani erpel, that I will have wounded, and I will then bring healing. Ask the Gemara, Hashta achuye mechaye merape lokoshekem. Once it says in the beginning of the pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to then bring life to the dead, then why does it have to state that he is going to heal that which he wounded? Elom HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, Ma she'ani memis, ani mechaye. Just as the same one who I caused to be put to death, the same one I will bring to life. Kemoshe machatzti v'ani erpo. Just like I have wounded, that's the one I am healing. It's the same goof, the same body. So too, the one that I am putting to death, that very body will then come back to life. Tonu Rabbanan, the Gemara brings a brisa to this effect. Ani amis va'echyeh. I put to death, and I will bring to life. Yachal, I might think misa be'echad v'chayim be'echad. That misa occurs to one goof, to one person, and the chiyus comes to something else. In other words, the chiyus cannot come from the very dead. Keder sha'olam noheg, like the world that we live in. That which is alive, that which is dead. Says the Gemara, Talmud loymar mochatzti v'ani erpe. I have wounded, and I then heal that very one that I have wounded. Ma make v'refuah be'echod, af misa v'chayim be'echod. Just as when it comes to the goof that I have wounded, I am healing, so too the very goof that I put to death, I will bring alive. Mikan teshuva la'imrim ein tchias hamesim min haTorah. From here we see an answer to those who say there's tchias hamesim not found in the Torah. Here we have a pasuk that clearly states this concept of tchias hamesim in the Torah. Dover acher, another limu that we have is betchila ma shani memis ani mechaye. In the beginning, that which I have put to death, I will bring alive. I will resurrect the dead. The hodar, and only afterwards, masha machatzti vani erpa. In other words, somebody who had certain illness or was blind or something else when he died, that person will be brought alive first with that illness and that blindness, and then afterwards, being resurrected, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then heal him. And that's the order of the pasuk. Ani memis ani mechaye, and then it says machatzti vani erpe.